There has really been nobody more important to not just the sports movement, but just women's rights in general than Billie Jean King.
Female athletes have become global phenomena, attracting millions of viewers to sporting events and empowering generations of young athletes. But few would have achieved greatness if not for the efforts of tennis legend Billie Jean King, who revolutionized women's sports in the 1970s. From a young age, Billie Jean King experienced the inequalities of tennis faced by women and minorities, which she was determined to change.
All I knew is that I didn't feel tennis was right.
Her efforts culminated on September 20th, 1973, when Billie Jean King beat Bobby Riggs in a revolutionary tennis match dubbed the Battle of the Sexes.
King's success led to the reform in the gender pay gap in professional sports and overturned the narrative that women were less capable than men. Widespread positive reactions to King's win amplified her influence in the women's liberation movement and helped gain public support for the controversial Title IX, increasing women's participation in high school, collegiate, and professional sports.
Second-wave feminism gained momentum during the civil rights movement and drew inspiration from its advocacy for equality. When men returned home from World War II to women in traditionally male jobs, they expected to reinforce former social stereotypes. Instead, they were met with feminist pushback, which would later become known as the second-wave feminist movement. From the early 60s into the late 80s, the movement took place in a socially and politically progressive climate, alongside many other groups seeking equality and justice. A major protagonist of the movement, Betty Friedan, was the first president of the National Organization for Women. NOW's main goal was to achieve the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment, which aimed to establish legal gender equality, becoming the cornerstone of second-wave feminism. A legal landmark in the movement was the Equal Pay Act of 1963, which granted equal pay for comparatively equal work, but excluded compensation equity for sports. A similar revolution was afoot in tennis. 1968 marked the emergence of the Tennis Open era, which transformed professional tennis by allowing pros and amateurs to play together with public prize money, inadvertently highlighting the gender pay gap.
In the first Open tournament, Virginia Wade won $8,000 less than the male winner. In reaction, on September 23, 1970, King and 8 other pro women, known as the Original Nine, broke from the United States Lawn Tennis Association and signed $1 contracts to form a revolutionary tennis circuit called the Virginia Slims.
The Slims' first tournament offered $7,500 to the winner and was held the same week as the USLTA-sponsored tour, where promoter Jack Kramer had announced the prize money would be $12,500 for the men and only $1,500 for the women. This sexism on the court was a reflection of the broader anti-feminist movement off of it. Led by Phyllis Schlafly and her coalition of around 20,000 traditionalist women, the anti-feminist movement launched the Stop ERA campaign in 1972, leading to the amendment's eventual rejection.
Amidst this opposition, progress was being made.
In 1972, the Revolutionary Education Amendments Bill, authored by Patsy Mink, reacted to feminist demands for equality. Title IX of the bill states that
no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance.
Title IX revolutionized federally funded sports, requiring equal inclusion regardless of sex. Still, equal participation did not correlate to equitable pay. At the 1972 U.S. Open, the men's champion was awarded $25,000, King a striking $15,000 less. In her post-match conference, King threatened,
"I don't think we'll be back next year unless we have equal prize money."
Shortly after, King co-founded the Women's Tennis Association to unify women's tennis as advocates for equal money and opportunity. Because of the efforts of the WTA and King, in 1973, the U.S. Open reacted to the calls for reform and revolutionized women's sports by becoming the first professional sporting event to offer equal prize money.
He was a character. He loved the action. He loved what has been written about him, that he was a hustler. He loved to put a couple of dollars on a game.
Bobby Riggs, a former #1 tennis player, was an outspoken misogynist.
The male is king, the male is supreme, and the women should know that.
You're a male chauvinist,
In the early 1970s, Riggs, hoping to stir up a lucrative tennis match, challenged the top female players Billie Jean King, Chris Evert, and Margaret Court. Court, the top female tennis player at the time, accepted the offer without considering how her loss could fuel the anti-feminist movement. Court and Riggs played on Mother's Day, May 13, 1973, where Riggs humiliated Court in a crushing 6-2, 6-1 victory. Fittingly, the match was nicknamed the Mother's Day Massacre. In reaction, King accepted Riggs' offer and vowed to defeat him, or, as she said,
I thought it would set us back 50 years if I didn't win that match. It would ruin the women's tour and affect all women's esteem.
The match would also become an allegory for the two arguments regarding women in the 70s, those who fought for reform and those who stayed rooted in the past.
Live from the Astrodome in Houston, Texas, the tennis battle of the sexes, Billie Jean King versus Bobby Riggs.
On September 20th, 1973, the revolutionary Battle of the Sexes was played in the Houston Astrodome between Bobby Riggs and Billie Jean King for a winner-take-all prize of $100,000 and broadcast worldwide to over 90 million people, making it the most-watched tennis match to date. Due to the highly publicized nature of the event, King had the potential to vindicate the goals of the feminist movement.
My job in the match was to change the hearts and minds of people to match the legislation of Title IX and what we were trying to do with the women's movement. It was to validate it, to celebrate it, and to get going towards changing a world where we had equality for both genders.
In an atmosphere more suited for a circus than a sports event, King was carried into the Astrodome on a throne, while female models, nicknamed Bobby's bosom buddies, pulled Riggs into the arena. Once dismounted, Riggs presented King with a giant sugar daddy lollipop, and King gave Riggs a male chauvinist baby pig. 2 hours later, on Riggs' backhand volley into the net, Billie Jean King emerged the winner of the Battle of the Sexes in straight sets, 6-4, 6-3, 6-3.
When you think about that moment and the reaction that night of her victory, I mean, women were erupting into cheers from the college dorm halls. That was the sound of a lot of young women screaming for joy. You know, the match was seen by everyone, including little boys who would grow up to be dads to girl athletes and corporate executives.
The match was also seen by a young Barack Obama, who would later award King the Presidential Medal of Freedom for her revolutionary social impact. However, many speculated that the gambling-obsessed Riggs bet on his own loss and threw the match. Coming off Court's huge defeat, some were shocked to see him lose to Court's runner-up. Still, the revolutionary win instigated significant reform of women's sports, most immediately by vindicating Title IX.
Most institutions were prepared to go to court to resist it, and really, King's victory showed the hollowness of those arguments and made it clear that Title IX was going to be enforced and that schools and colleges were going to have to take affirmative steps to create programs for girls and women on par with what they did for boys and men.
In 1974, King founded the Women's Sports Foundation to prevent future attacks on this legislation and empower young girls to exercise their Title IX rights. Both the 1975 Tower Amendment and the Commission of Opportunity and Athletics aimed to undercut Title IX for the interest of male sports. Thanks to efforts by King and the WSF, both attempts failed. From Title IX's passage to 2024, girls' participation in high school sports grew by over 1,000%, and female student athletes were finally able to receive collegiate scholarships.
Women's Sports Foundation's work has always been about proving why sports is bigger than entertainment and what it does for the advancement of women. It all started with people like Billie that recognized that, and then you go into what's happened with soccer and equal pay. That journey started back probably with the 1999 World Cup team, the Julie Foudies of the world. Billie was one of the biggest leaders to sit there and say, this is what you have to do. Well, that 99 team realized they needed to use their voices. They needed to be able to say, we are not being treated fairly.
Billie's win introduced the value of Title IX, but the U.S. women's soccer team gave the legislation a tangible impact. Billie Jean King's campaign for equal prize money in the Grand Slams was accomplished in 2007 when Wimbledon became the last of the 4 majors to offer equal pay. The U.S. Open was the first to reform its system in 1973, the Australian Open followed in 2001, and Roland Garros in 2006. While tennis has undergone reform and equal pay, revolutions in other women's sports continue. In the WNBA, athletes were paid 40% less league revenue than NBA players and had salary caps of $250,000. After advocacy from the players, the WNBA negotiated a new collective bargaining agreement, raising the price cap to $7 million a team and increasing the WNBA's revenue percentage by 10%. Although the CBA is beginning to close the pay gap within professional basketball, the struggle for financial equality in women's sports is still ongoing, but looking to tennis as an inspiration. As King says,
We fought for equality. Women's tennis is the leader in women's sports, on and off the court.
Billie Jean King's legacy has transcended tennis. Her revolutionary win at the Battle of the Sexes not only reformed the tennis pay inequity, but spurred reaction beyond tennis fans, creating a platform for King to progress the women's liberation movement's goals and reinforce Title IX, creating and strengthening opportunities for generations of female athletes.
No, you can't.